Good day, everyone. First of all, thank you so much, the organizer, for inviting me to participate in this panel. I feel very honored to be here and feel very fortunate to have heard Professor Fowler this morning and also Professor from Sydney just now. And I'm trying to squeeze my thoughts into leaderships in terms of difficulty for engineering educations. And I think I'm going to frame my thoughts along the line of the Malaysia Education Blueprint. Although this is actually engineering education, but Malaysia Education Blueprint are already moving towards outcome-based education, which is actually similar to what engineering educations are actually aspire to do. And when I was thinking about this topic, there are two things that came to my mind. What kind of leaderships are we going to discuss this afternoon? And I think one aspect is that we are looking into leaders in innovations for engineering educations, and people like Roger Felder, people like Professor Khairia, people who are at the forefront of innovating engineering educations. Those are leaders in their own rights, and those are the I think we can talk about that kind of leaderships in different forms and different formats. But I would like to focus leaderships here in terms of difficulties or in terms of uncertainty. Leaderships here for people who are in charge of education itself. We talk about head of departments, head of programs, the deans, the deputy vice chancellors of academic like Professor Zainuddin himself, and even for that matter, the vice chancellors of the universities. How do they actually play their role or leadership roles in terms of uncertainties to shape the engineering educations? We have been talking about the kind of students that we want to produce, and there have been a lot of innovations in the way we want to deliver our educations, the way we want to assess the outcomes of our students. But I think the move or the transformations in the change, the total change that we would like to see, I think has been quite slow in coming. We talk about for Malaysia itself. If I'm not wrong, we talked about outcome-based educations way back in 2004. The day or the year that Malaysia wanted to become or to apply into a Washington Accord member country. So I think what had been missing is the push from the leaders to actually transform. And I think now with the pandemic, with the COVID, I think the push, hopefully, the push should be stronger for the leaders to actually change and the way we manage our education, so engineering education for that matter. So actually, I'm putting up to document here, but there are so many other documents that are related to this. We talk about career pathways, and I'm going to actually touch a little bit in my presentation. So if I can, I think Liana is helping me. Liana, the host, yeah. I'm going to simplify it. The transformation that we need into our institutional leadership for engineering educations in terms of certainties in three requirement of three prerequisites. We cannot lead, we cannot transform without asking basic questions: what kind of students that we actually want to produce. And every one of us have a different ideas, and obviously our accreditation agencies will have a different ideas too. But what is also important, so I'm going to touch about that a little bit, and the lecturers or the talent. We talk about having the right talent. This morning, Professor Richard Felder mentioned about people who have, people need to be at the forefront of their research in order to be effective in teaching. But nowadays, we probably need to engage people from industries, people who have experiences, people who have the context into teaching. So putting the right talent, the right talent in our organization would be important. And what is also very important, I think this is also touched by Professor Roger just now. We have been talking about collaboration, but I think it requires a different kind of collaboration altogether. And so I'm going to touch a little bit on collaboration in our education ecosystem, where industry leaders, community leaders, and also accreditation agencies need to come into play and have the change mindset themselves in order to help us in delivering our education more effectively. Before I even go into the change that we need in our institutional leadership. So if I go to the next slide, if we go to the next slide on just very simply. Regardless, this is actually an evergreen. We need to be able to produce future-proof graduates. I think this is what we have been talking about day in and day out. And we talk about functional graduates. And I think this is the challenge when we talk about functional graduates. They need to be able to function well in the workplace, and also they need to be able to function well in the society and community. I think this is what our blueprint has been, framing that we want to develop our students to be able to be holistic, to be balanced, and in other words, to be functional graduates. But I think the questions that we need to be able to answer, and we have been trying to, this is actually being set in our manual for accreditation as an example. I think Dr. Siti Hawa will come in later on this. But the kind of characters, I think we need to be able to answer this more clearly even today. I think we have been talking about characters building. We've been talking about the skill sets in the form of problem solving, ability to lead, ability to work in the leadership, ability to work, in a team. But I think probably what is actually needed more now is by the time the students are actually graduating, they should have certain competencies that they can carry before they even go into the workplace. And this is where I think Professor Roger just now also mentioned about the students need to know what they want rather than they are actually to just want to get a good grades, wanting to graduate with the first class. I think those has been in the past. But I think what we need to encourage our students now, we need to be able to ask them, what is it that are passionate about? What is the end games? What Professor Zainuddin mentioned about the end games? Where they want to end up with. And therefore, I think they need to be able to answer themselves and to map what we call as personalized education. I think the challenge to the leaders and the challenge to us later on would be how do we, despite engineering educations, need to satisfy, a certain rules for the programs accreditations. But I think that personalized education for engineering students also just as important. And I think little competency certifications would matter as well. I wouldn't be surprised, for that matter, for example, if some of our engineering graduates would be working, and they're already working in the banks, they're already working in consultancy companies like McKinsey, as an example. And if they know that this is a kind of workplace that they want to actually serve and they are very passionate about, if they know this when they are still in the university, then the university and we should be able to help them getting those competencies before they even go out. And this is what I meant by personal education. But the students need to actually express this themselves, and we need to be able to bring them out of it. So, and the second one would be the talent, which is actually the lecturers. This book, the Green Book that we have actually produced in 2016, actually to be adopted for higher learning institutions in Malaysia. It was actually very clear from surveys of 5,000 academics that we have in the country. 90% of our academia would like to see what we call as a differentiated career pathway. In a way, if I can explain quickly what we mean by differentiated career pathway, I think in the past, at least 5 years ago, most of our promotions, most of our recognitions are actually going into people who are actually involved in research and publishing and getting research grant, producing masters and PhD students, and people who are actually passionate in teaching, having great innovations in students' character buildings. Their pathways are actually not there at the universities, and I think And the surveys that we have actually conducted as well reveal that nearly 50% of our academia would like to be recognized as passionate educators. But the questions would be, would our department, would our faculties, would our university be, accommodative to these desires of academia? So, and I think just people like, human being human, we only respond to incentives. We respond to although many of us although also have our own passion that we pursue regardless. We pursue this excellence in teaching regardless. But I think the system must be able to facilitate this. Yeah? So we need to be able to recognize lecturers who are actually passionate in education. They can be very innovative. They can be very resourceful. What is also important, I think we need to have more and more lecturers who are actually empowering the students. And also this morning, Professor Richard Felder mentions about our ability to inspire the students, because nowadays, we are no longer the source of knowledge for them. We just need to inspire them to seek knowledge. But I think the challenge has always been when it comes to how do we measure excellence for teaching, educators, for our educators. I think this has been a subject of debate, and many of our lecturers who wants to, to follow the pathways for educators pathways, I think they become demotivated when the demand and the requirement are so unreasonable and more difficult, and they would some of them would go back to research path. I think this is actually counterproductive if we were to push for more meaningful teaching for our students. And therefore I think sorry for the wrong spelling there, but I think the institutions and the leaders need to be able to recognize excellence in innovations in teaching and educations, and also provide a very clear incentives and career pathways for our lecturers. And therefore we then we are going to get good results for our students.